Father's house at Star of the Sea. It's told in a few different kind of registers. A part of it is third person and part of it is first person and so on. But the central character is this wonderful woman, the Contessa Giovanna Landini, and bits and pieces of My Father's House present themselves to the reader as a part of her memoir that she wrote about these events. She never published it, but there's a document running through the book which is her attempt at a memoir, her memories of life in Rome during these years. So I'll read for 6 or 8 minutes from that. So this is, you have to imagine that this is her voice. The Contessa Giovanna Landini, from an unpublished memoir written between 1963 and 1978. In Rome, during the Second War, I belonged to an illegal organisation we called the Choir. Our purpose was to assist escaped Allied prisoners and other fugitives from the Nazis who had invaded La Bella Città in September of 1943, but never, despite their cruelty, quite conquered it. They declared it an open city. In fact, it was not. We were governed by fascism and brutalised by the Gestapo. By mid-March of 1944, we had thousands of fugitives in hiding and thousands more on their way. In those weeks, I saw many a strange and haunting sight, but none stranger than the starlit life many of the escapades made for themselves among the eternal city's rooftops. To a Roman, spring is lovely, the soprano of the seasons. Our gracious parks, our glorious gardens shake awake and don their flirtish finery. Pink azaleas, scarlet poppies, yellow and gold mimosa. Sombre old pines take a dim view of the risque new fashions, but their evergreen is the colour of envy. Old churches glimpsed through blossom, sunlight through stained glass. Warmer, richer light, gilding frescoes and fountains. Dawn rising earlier on a blushing Colosseum. Chianti-tinted apartment blocks and cream-hued cathedrals. Dew-besotted groves steaming with the fragrance of rosemary. Winter wine tastes of velvet. Spring's lusciousness is cheekier. Noses go deeper into the glass in search of every note. As the colour of a plate may alter the taste of its food, a Caravaggio, looked at in March, has a riper, brighter, more hopeful, vivid sublimeness than the same one examined last November. Pictures beckon us into them, where in winter their beauty was chilly. The cold marble goddess seems sultry and alive as she smiles across the sculpture gallery at the inscrutably handsome Caesar. We find ourselves wanting to touch statues, mosaic work, sun-warmed ancient walls. The walkways by the Tiber become beautiful. But men in cramped captivity saw little of the pageant. The air they breathed was not the sweetness of nature, but the stale fug of shut-in places. To some of the escapees, especially Northern Europeans, our Lenten-tide days felt sticky and oppressive, hotter than in fact they were. Water was scarce. Hauptmann, the Nazi commander, ordered the mains turned off if an act of resistance by the populace displeased him. As dusk fell, escapees would steal from their stuffy cellars and attics and climb to a kind of freedom. On the rooftops they could walk and have company for an hour, aired by the relieving breeze. When freedoms are forbidden, their enjoyment becomes an especially delicious pleasure. The men had been ordered by the escape line leadership never to leave their sanctums, but the harsher the terms of our order, the more the escapees defied it. Never with any disrespect or expression of mutinous purpose. Quite the contrary, they were almost always courteous. But there was something in being under the blue of the night with their fellow riskers of death that seemed impossible to resist. The angels ride Harleys, a Chicagoan escapee once told me. The stars are their headlights coming. In their disobedience, the men showed the stubbornness and ingenuity that had made them escapees in the first place. Survivors of unescapable prisoner of war camps, they had thrashed through barbed wire, swum moats, crossed raging rivers, had walked hundreds of kilometres, survived famishment and sunstroke. Each man was different, but each man was a jailbreaker. He would not be imprisoned by commands. There were also the everyday facts of human nature. Internment in a camp had at least meant company. Freedom in hiding could be dull. Many went walking, night rambling through Rome, through the shadowlands of the occupied city, stealing food, mooching about, picking up cigarette butts and girlfriends, roaming the moonlit rooftops. The gaps between buildings were spanned by any contrivable means: ladders, chains, ropes, bits of webbing, gangways made of rusted girders, clotheslines connecting balconies. Flimsy bridges improvised from tied together old planks, a sort of cable car fashioned from a tea crate and pulleys from the engine of a burnt-out Fiat, so that even the wounded could have high life, as the escapees termed it. "I'll see you upstairs," was their code, or sometimes "in Los Angeles," nodding towards the literal meaning of that beautiful place name. It had to be stopped. I was given the task of stopping it. Easier to gather water in a sieve. So there we are, that's the So, yeah, the poor